And a very good morning to all of you. Now, India is one of the largest and the fastest growing economy. The ambition for growth is 10%. At the same time, India has what we call the demographic dividend. The median age is 28 to 29, and this demographic dividend is set to continue for the next 30 years. All the speakers spoke about COVID and the speed of digitization, the importance of it. So if these are the trends, what will the future economy and the future workplace look like? How do we mix tech and people? What are the risks? To answer these questions, we have very eminent panelists with a wealth of experience. So without any further delay, we'll go to our panelists with this discussion on humanize and digitize the modern workplace. Now, let me start with a question that what are the organizations in different industries trying to achieve with the digitization of the workforce? And Rajeshwar, we'll go over to you for your comments on this.
Good morning, everyone. So, thanks, Nithin. Actually, we should, if we look at what are the, why are the organizations going for digitization in the first place, right? So, if I was to just spend some time on this, especially in context of the manufacturing industry or the organization like ours, I like to call it brick and mortar industry. I think it's a massive leap. What is happening right now? So, of course, the top of the mind, the top of the recall is productivity. And when we say productivity, I think it's the right tool in the hands of people for doing the work, for doing it better, for doing more and more with the same resources, whatever way you want to define productivity. So that's absolutely an imperative. The second is, I think, look at the speed and agility expectation in the entire world in a very complex ecosystem. It's no more standalone organizations, very networked, and the kind of speed and agility which is required in terms of time to market, response to customers, and even in all the other stakeholders. The third one, of course, that's the most cliched thing now, the pandemic, what it has done, the virtual working, the remote working, and I don't think it's a matter of choice anymore. And whatever was there, all the myths are completely shattered and broken. And the last one, I think it's extremely important. I think I've said, but even at the cost of repetition, in order to manage the very complex environment, the complexity, highly networked organizations, digitization has completely changed the way the organizations work in today's context. Over to you, Nithin.
Yeah, all right. So thank you very much. Vinod, you come from a totally different industry, which is technology oriented. What are your views?
Yeah, thanks, Nithin, and thanks, Rajeshwar. Actually, you set the context. So I come from technology industry, but the way the current work environment is, the workforce is, it was never planned that this is the way things will move. Means even we are a technology company, but we all were working out of offices. We were never working out of home. But having said that, the digitized workforce was never a planned intervention. It came as something which was there for sustain the businesses, to deliver to your client, to deliver to your stakeholders. But over a period of time, if you look at last 2 years, it has become kind of a regular operating model now. And the regular operating model for a lot of reasons. Say, if you look at it from technology standpoint, technology has enabled this virtual working, has enabled digitized workforce, has enabled even digitized workplaces. And this has realized, I think, the whole industry, the organization, the benefits that it has brought in. The benefits is in terms of the, say, if we look at it from employees' perspective, they have got a lot of flexibility in terms of how they operate, what hours of the day they operate, and so on and so forth. And if you look at it, what purpose it is achieving, say for the industry, for the organization, while the cost benefits are one, which are across industries, not just say IT, it is across industries, but it has really helped to penetrate deeper in the sourcing market. Now, if I look at it from recruitment HR standpoint, we have gone to say tier 3, tier 4 cities since work from home has enabled. So people who were earlier were not able to make it to metros or the nearby operating center, they are now our employees. In the last 2 years, so we have penetrated almost into 60 tier 3, tier 4 cities, and employees working out of those places where we never thought of we getting into, or we never thought of, or for that matter, market never thought of that they would be working for the organization like ours and a lot of others. And what has happened indirectly, while we have gone to tier 3, tier 4, the diversity ratio has improved significantly, which means a lot of gender diverse workforce, which was not able to again make it to the nearest operating center, they are working from their home, and it has improved almost by 50%. If this was a mix like in mid 30s earlier, it has gone to almost 50% of the all new hire. So that's another purpose which is getting achieved in a digitized workforce or a digitized workplace. And there are other benefits which I think are getting driven out of the model in itself, a better retention, and so on and so forth. But I think all this is coming with some kind of downfall in terms of how do we make sure the employees are engaged in the scattered environment? How do we make sure that there are mental well-being of our employees, or for that matter, even the supervisory layer is maintained and consistent. But there are means by which I think these things are getting managed. There is a balance which has got created, some by itself and some by design, the way organizations are working. But in a nutshell, whether it is technology, manufacturing, any other industry, I think the digitized workforce has brought in multiple options, has given benefits on either side of the value chain, and it's going to sustain for long. It's not that though it was introduced due to pandemic, but I think it's going to sustain for long in the regular delivery model.
So, that's a very interesting point you put forward, that you are getting with this digitized environment, you are getting more employment in tier, in sort of or more inclusion in terms of diversity, and also going to deeper into the country. It's a very, very interesting thought, and I think this is wonderful for for the country as a whole. And also, having a diverse sort of work environment and a diverse workforce is always beneficial. So very, very interesting thought. So, Amit, what about the
top up on that? Nithin, I just want to make one more point. A top up on that, say the way that the workforce has become diverse, it has drawn attention of global clients also, like people who were specially able people who had locomotive disability. Now they're a part of mainstream working. So that again is inviting a lot of support, attention, and collaboration with clients, stakeholders, and so on and so forth. That again has a positive development which has happened.
Very, very interesting. Actually, I never thought of benefits of digitization from this perspective. So thank you for that, Amit, I'd be very, very keen to hear the consumer industry and what is happening, what is digitization bringing to your industry in particular. Amit, over to you.
Yes, thanks, Nithin. Hi, everyone. So, if for a moment we were to step aside from our roles as, professionals, and were to start thinking of ourselves as consumers and think about, how is it that our life has changed, I would say over the last several years, it's about greater choices in terms of the way we are able to make how is it that we'd like to do our purchases. So I mean, from a consumer products company perspective, how is it that you would earlier buy let's say your tea or your salt or your coffee or any related products, vis-a-vis how do you buy it now? And if you think of it, there are 3 or 4 key things that drive that, right? One is the whole concept of choice. So I have more more options available from which I can choose, if I'm used the term. The second is a matter of convenience. So I don't need to go to actually get the product. The product actually comes to me after I've made an informed choice. The third is the whole element, how, if I'm used the word of transparency. And what I mean by that is consumers over the world now are getting into the whole concept of traceability. So which is, if I have, got out a particular product or a particular brand of tea, through a traceability concept, I should be able to know from which, was this product ethically sourced? Was it sourced from someone who's certified? How is it that I know that, the origin of this product was strong, et cetera, et cetera. So, which means you have an opportunity to actually extend and check the entire backend supply chain that is there, that's coming in from a product perspective. And finally, I have competitiveness of price when I'm being able to make a choice simply because of the number of platforms that are available for me to buy it. So if you were to now think that this is what your evolved consumer is going to look like as you move forward, and this is not just true in Mumbai, Delhi, and Hyderabad. This is true in Rehala, Behala, Shambhupura today in India, cities which you may otherwise not be able to find on a map. So what this is essentially doing is that digitization basically gives you speed, it gives you convenience, but most importantly, it frees up your time. So these are the 3 things that essentially digitization drives from a consumer perspective. If you were to look at an outside in view, and therefore, what does it mean for companies and what does it mean for people, who are serving these consumers, for example, within the consumer products industry, it really is about 3 key principles, which is around flexibility, adaptability, and agility. And as long as you're able to work through on these 3 principles from a digitization perspective, you will suddenly find that you're able to free up your time to move up from what otherwise would have been activity or monitoring or how shall I say, managing, towards a concept of more innovation, more empowerment, and more open thinking in some way. So I always like to say that the internet or a Zoom call, for example, has democratized the opportunity for conversations, for innovation, for empowerment in a lot of ways. So I think digitization in a lot of ways is a means to an end. So to my mind, the biggest thing that digitization has done for us is change the culture of how we work, not just from a technology perspective, but also from a culture perspective, which is more empowerment, more accountability, more flexibility, and as a consequence, more innovation, greater ideas and opportunities to collaborate and align everyone towards either impacting, influencing, or communicating to customers or consumers. That's the way I would see it, Nithin.
Again, Amit, very interesting and totally different perspective that actually digitization is freeing up your time for innovation, for growth. And, you get away from the mundane tasks and monitoring and some basic things, and you focus on things that are critical for the consumer and for the business. So again, a very interesting process. So we've spoken about benefits. Let me just talk about it totally, just the flip side. And Nikita, I'll move over to you. Do you see any risks? With the earlier one of the speakers spoke about a Zoom fatigue. Not meeting each other. I'm like, do you see any risks to the business from digitization? Are we overdoing it? Where are we? What's your opinion, Nikita?
I think I come from the thought process that while digitization is the way it is going to be, but we shouldn't forget that there has to be a human element involved. You will get all the data that you want, you'll get all the analytics that you want from the machine, but eventually the ethos of the problem statement has to come from a human who's deciphering that data, who can then go and talk to your employee and really, really understand and empathize, which I'm not sure if digitization will be able to get. And which is probably what we saw when we 100% moved to Zoom. In the beginning, it was a really happy phase, right? You're sitting at your home, in the comfort of your home, in your pajamas, and it's still informal, right? And we are an informal organization. So we were on top of the world, and slowly and steadily we realized the number of working hours are increasing. The complexity of delivering a task is increasing. But I'm not very sure if the productivity was increasing. Because earlier, when you were in office, you were connected. If there was a problem, you just walked up to the person and solved for it. Now you have to wait for that person to be free, block his calendar, then block somebody else's calendar, and so on and so forth. So something that probably took you 5 minutes start taking you much longer. And clearly, engagement also starts taking a backseat. Your hiring decisions, while the mouth of the funnel is open, like Vinod rightly said, you have tier 3, tier 4, you have diversity candidates now joining. But when you're interviewing, you're still doing the interview on Zoom. Are you getting 100% understanding of that person that you're hiring, which you would have got when you were in person and also in a position to understand the body language? I don't think that's happening now, and that's probably another flip side. Some of the ways I think we have tried to deal with it is that where possible, we've introduced this Chai Pe Charcha session, which is like once in a 2 weeks thing, where everybody across the length and breadth of the world, in fact, because we are pan world, comes together from a team. And I think one of my fondest memory is when I had a session with my team members, and 3 of them had their babies in their laps. So that I don't think I would have had an opportunity to meet the babies if not for technology-enabled world that we're living in today. And so that's the positive side and the flip side. And one of the things that I still feel is that the safety net in the digital world has extended beyond employees to now families too. So that's what it is from my side. Nithin, over to you.
Right, and Rajesh, I'd love to hear from you as well. And when we were preparing for these sessions and getting to know each other, you said that you've been on both sides. You have been on a sales and marketing environment, and also from a HR side. And I'd love to hear your perspective.
Thanks, Nithin, and thanks. Good morning to all the speakers. My view is, digitization is far more than work from home or work from anywhere. When I look at digitization from a holistic perspective, it is all about automation, digitization, sensor-based decision-making, artificial intelligence, robotization, and how that is going to invade the workplace. And thereby, as the speakers earlier alluded to, reducing a lot of transactional work, freeing up time. The risks that I see, frankly, are that, a lot of entry-level jobs that are currently transactional in nature may or may not exist in the future. There's a question mark. They may be taken over by the processes and by the systems that these bring in. Is that a bad thing? Perhaps not. We need to be ready that the jobs will shift. Jobs will shift from a pure transactional job to a more technical job or technology-oriented jobs. So I think the youth of tomorrow and the companies need to be prepared for this transition, that the jobs will change as technology takes over. And also, since you're talking about risks, one of the things that we have seen is that, if you talk about work from home, which is ever so popular now, is that work from home or work from anywhere is a new concept. It's not really entrenched in many organizations. And people who join us are not really used to it. So if you talk about the youth, they need a face-to-face time. They feel comfortable with physical presence. I have faced issues wherein a newcomer is joining us and he is operating virtually for months together. And that connect and that sense of bonding is still not developed after so many months because you haven't met physically. Another instance where I've seen is, as Nikita was mentioning, we are interviewing somebody remotely. We still don't get that sense of comfort. We actually have started calling such people to office for a final interview. We want to see him because at the end of the day, we are human beings. And I think we have still not evolved mentally to a workplace which is completely remote. So it will take time. Possibly we'll get there, but I think it's a process of evolution. And while there are risks and there are gains, I think it will be a blend of in-person and automated workplace that we will see for the perceivable future. What role will automation and what percentage of roles will automation, digitization, and robotization will take over in the future is a big question mark. But I think a lot of entry-level jobs will get changed as we move along. That is my take on the entire thing.
So, Rajesh and Nikita, actually, I would like to ask a question to both of you. Rajesh, you said that a lot of jobs will change, and this whole change and the very fast change can also be very stressful. Nikita, when we had a discussion, you were also speaking about how important it is to train for resilience. So I'm like, is this, it's a very stressful environment also. So Rajesh, do we need to, the organization need to take specific effort to retrain for technology or, create that mindset? And Nikita, how does one prepare somebody for resilience? So Rajesh, over to you first, and Nikita, it's a heads up. That's the question that I have.
Nithin, I don't think the change is extremely rapid. It is not as if we are changing day in, day out. It's not going to be very rapid, because even if I look at how technology has gradually crept us, I mean, I would say it is creeping in. It is creeping in. It is not a switch on, switch off kind of a technology which is going to operate. So there is time that we can that I see becoming available to organizations to train. It is not as drastic as it sounds. Yes, mentally we need to be prepared that there will be changes. Mentally we need to be prepared that the kind of talent we hire possibly will be different. And as far as the people who are inside the organization, retraining them to adopt new technologies, I think there is a plan and there is time. So I don't think it's very, very drastic that you need to start worrying about things. Everything can be planned if anticipated well in advance. And that's the way I would see it. It is not really, I mean, we are not pressing the panic button really.
All right. Nikita?
So my view on this was that in my career, I have seen that we are almost always planning for efficiencies, right? Be it process, be it the person we put in a job, but we've not really trained people for resilience. So when the pandemic happened, I can honestly tell you that the first 1 week we were all just wondering what are we going to do, because travel was one of the most disrupted organizations, so to say. Mental well-being of our employees took a direct hit. There were, I think at any given point in time, we had 21, 22 people going through wellness coaching and counseling because they were in such a state. Because of the pandemic, because of their own insecurities, because of what was happening to them and their families thanks to COVID. What we realized was that it became very, very important for us to train our employees to manage situations of stress, be it through sessions on managerial effectiveness. How do you manage your teams that are working remotely? Be it about restructuring in such a manner that it is not a huge lob and it becomes very different to move things or very difficult to move things. We tried working out pod structures, which is an entire unit in itself. And then when the project gets delivered, the pod gets designed and, it moves and does a different role or gets aligned to somebody else. Also, we are trying to make the entire organization more flexible, more agile. We are doing a lot of work on reskilling our population. But like Rajesh rightly said, it'll take time. It'll take time, but what we're trying to do right now is prepare them that, while this particular disruption may go, you don't know what will come tomorrow. And therefore, you have to be prepared for it. And if I think we can even get 10% of the population to understand that, we've probably reached a milestone in itself.
So, Nikita, I think you used some very interesting words: counseling, well-being, and I think this, and I think it was. So there is a high-tech component, but there is also a high-touch component.
Yes.
And you're believing that you're saying that mix is also very important. So very interesting. Thank you for that, Nikita. So let me just, let me just open up the forum, and I would say the next question would be, or the ultimately, the some sort of your final view, that we are talking about the recipe between between tech and people, humanize and digitize. So my question to all of you, and you're experts and you in different industries have built that wealth of experience. How do you see the future workplace? What will it be like? What is the ideal mix? And what is your advice to leaders and people who are running the organizations or running the individual businesses and departments? So open to you, Amit. Let's start with you.
Yeah, so I'd say that the workplace of the future, the way I see it is, obviously, it will be hybrid, and we will have a lot more of collaborating through different mediums that will kind of happen. But to my mind, I think a very important piece for the workplace of the future, or at least leaders for the future, is going to be this whole point around empathy. And I think empathy is an often used and misunderstood term, in terms of the value it delivers. And bear with me for a moment when I, talk of an example that we kind of came across sometimes. So, as this whole, situation unfolded and people needed to do more meetings online, I mean, if you were to quickly look, even across the room or with people who are watching this, if you were to look at an average family size of 4, right, which is, a person, the spouse, and let's say 2 school-going children, just as an example, in what world and at what age did we ever imagine that we would need 4 laptops in our house at the same time so that everyone could continue education? And I'm talking of even the SECA type category, kind of people. So I think, to my mind, empathy, to me, the greatest demonstration that I actually saw was our ability to be able to tell our people that it doesn't matter if you can't take meetings in the morning because your child has to attend school and there are only 2 laptops in the family, right? So therefore, how is it that you're able to manage your priorities well, even in context of the fact that there is technology and all of this is happening, et cetera, et cetera? So I think in the name of flexibility, sometimes, in my view, we overlook a very, very important aspect of empathy, which has a very, very significant bearing on particularly mental well-being, because it goes back to the old adage of, people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Yeah, and that is something that will kind of continue to be with us, for a longish period of time. So that's the one comment I would say about the workplaces of the future. The second is about recognizing that the only way we will actually, grow, or the only way we will progress, because, I am what we call as Ashavadi. I am always an optimist. Yeah, I always say that the only way that will happen is if we continue to take risks and, continue to keep throwing darts at a dartboard. You will throw 20 darts, 3 will stick. So we will have to continuously keep finding newer ways. We will not, I think it's the leaders of the future need to recognize that we will not always get everything right the first time. We will go through a couple of models, we'll work through it, we'll come back, we'll manage, we'll, move forward. But the key has to always be with one eye on the future. Otherwise we risk becoming a Fuji or a Kodak, which, never realize that at one stage you could have a smartphone that would actually obliterate the need to actually take photographs through a camera. So to my mind, if you have one eye on the future and, one eye on flexibility and empathy as a combination, then that's what makes for an exciting workplace for people to look forward to, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person.
Wonderful. Well said. Very, very interesting. Rajesh, what's your view? It's like, how do you create a organization which optimizes both productivity and people experience? You're on mute, Rajesh.
Yeah, okay. No, okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it will always be a blend of both. And I think I'm not really looking at the next couple of years, because there is a new organization is shaping up. So as typically as teams get formed, the storming, forming, norming, all that will happen. Things will settle down. And, for example, today we really don't question employees who get crushed while traveling in their local train. You really don't think about it because it's taken for granted. They've been doing it for donkey's years, and therefore there's no sympathy there. I don't think anybody thinks about it. So, the current wave of sympathy that we feel for working from home and what are they coping with is also something which will become a normal, or people will change. People will buy 4 laptops. People will get into bigger houses, which they have done during the lockdown period. I think things will settle down. But if I look at the workplace of the future, what I see is, while we may be as employers, we may be desirous of controlling employees, I think what we need to do is enable them. Technology needs to enable employees to do things easily, effectively, and faster. So to give an example, today, for example, a person need not necessarily use a phone to get data. He doesn't need to, go in and log into his laptop and browse through an Excel sheet to get what is the information that he wants to convey to the employee, or what is the stock position of a particular product that he wants to sell. Everything, if automation, digitization can enable your employees to do work effortlessly, faster. You go to a visitor, you go to a customer, you know who the customer is, you know his profile, you know his likes, dislikes, and you are able to close the deal fast. I think that is what I see digitization helping the employees. So I would say, from an era of control, if we can go to an era of enablement, huge enablement, I think that is the kind of workplace that I would like to see, and that is the kind of workplace I think we would want to evolve to, wherein we enable employees and make the workplace a very happy place to be. So I think broadly, I would say that there will be ups and downs as we move along, but I think our objective is to stabilize towards a workplace which is hugely enabled.
Thanks, Rajesh. Rajeshwar, over to you.
Rajeshwar, you're on mute.
You're on mute. Are we not able to hear you?
Oh, sorry, extremely sorry. So my co-panelists have already spoken. I won't repeat. One thing which I am seeing, and a big trend for the future, and that is the churn. And most of us have been experiencing and reading also. It's almost becoming a global phenomenon. The kind of churn, the kind of attrition that you are witnessing, at the workplace, and this has something to do with what is happening across the world. If you look at the democratization of technology, right, the connectivity, right, what's happening in the social media, it's a suddenly eruption of the plethora of opportunities which are emerging, and very new age opportunities, lots of new areas, and that is coming up very fast, and therefore we are witnessing, I think, all-time highest attrition, not only in India, but it's being called as year of attrition in US. But my belief is that it's going to be a trend which is not going to go away very soon. So that's one thing I thought, out of all this, what's happening in the workplace, churn is here. The second thing I would like to highlight, and which again we have been experiencing, especially in the last 2.5 years, Rajesh has very well covered that, it's the leadership style, right? Is the same leadership style what was there is going to work in a very in today's kind of organizations? I believe it's going to be a lot more empowered, lot more enabled, very little supervision, although that has been building momentum over some time, but I think it's going to get accelerated, this particular trend. I don't think it will be a very different kind of leadership, right? Very distributed, very empowering. And the third trend, of course, I'm seeing is this entire impact of social media on the workplace. we've been talking a lot about employee engagement, morale, the expectations, etc. There's so much which is getting molded and impacted by the social media. Today, there is just one announcement of one single people policy, right, in one corner of the country. In the next 10 minutes, it's trending on Twitter. Trending. In the good old days, we used to take months and months even to come to know what's our competition is doing. Now, what's the impact it's having on the mindset of our employees, right? The expectation, the benchmarks are moving very, very rapidly. So I thought I'd highlight, these three trends, which I'm seeing, which is going to have a major impact in the future of the workplace.
Very interesting. And this, the point that you brought out on social media, I think it's excellent. And how it's impacting the way we work, the way we think, how we form opinions, and how we form perceptions. So yeah, it's an excellent point. So Vinod, over to you. How do you see the workplace?
Thanks, Nithin, and thanks all panelists. I think they have covered most of what I was thinking that it should be the way the future workplace would be. But a couple of points from my side. And this is not just about future workplace. I think a few of the points that I picked up from Nikita, Amit, and Rajesh. Say resilience is obviously very important, irrespective of how the future workplace has to be there or is going to be there. Empathy is really, to Amit, what you said is a overly grossly misused word. So what we realized over a period of time is let's break it down to the simpler, easily understandable things at the workplace, and that's how drive that to drive the same outcome. When we say we train people on resilience, we train people on empathy. It's about uh, respect, trust, dignity. That if you are able to bring in a culture of respect for all, generate enough trust in the system, and make sure that everybody feels that they are doing a dignified job in the way they are contributing to the organization, I think that solves the purpose, irrespective of workplace. So I think the go forward things, whether it is a virtual workplace or it is a brick and mortar, we should stick to these fundamentals, create enough in the culture environment to say that all are stressed, whether it is a mix of virtual or brick and mortar. So if we stick to these fundamental of respect, trust, dignity, we create a better workplace. Uh, and and uh, and the second thing is, like Amit touched upon, the consumer side of the workplace and the workforce. Uh, we should create more options for our workforce, our employees. While enabling and empowering are very, very strong words, but sometimes people, when they are given options, they feel it that they are more enabled, they are more empowered, and that's how the future workplace we leave it at hands of our employees, our stakeholder, to say that you have these options and now you can exercise, and that creates a more ownership also. Uh, the future workplace might have challenges with respect to, say, productivity, with respect to engagement. But I think if we convert enable and empowerment into more options at the hands of employees, given the outcome and the objective may be the same of doing all this. That's what I feel, that more option-driven environment at hands of employees and creating those fundamentals as the basic in the system will or should be part of the future workplace.
All right. So we are running out of time. Thank you, Vinod. But Amit, if you can just give me, I'm tempted to put in this question, and I have personal interest because I have two young teenage boys. We are talking about a younger workforce. How do we communicate to them? How do we talk to them? What is your thought process on that?
So I think I always say that our big challenge is that at home we want our children to keep growing up, and we tell them please grow up, and we want them to be adults. And then when we have these young adults enter the workforce, I think we tend to treat them like children, which is we believe that they need instructions First we want them to stand up and talk, and then we tell them to shut up and sit down. So I think very often the way I look at it is, if you look at young people, what are they inspired by, right? They're inspired by the ability to have an open, honest conversation. They're inspired. They're very they're very concerned about how is it that they can grow and get better. They're very they're always in search of mentors. And so I think just having open, honest, two-way conversations helps very often. The one thing which we should definitely, in my view, not do, which is also true when we talk about our kids, is to say that when I was your age or when I was young, this is what it was. Because, we think that this is one generation, but this is, 20 years. So if you look at anybody who's born after the year 2000, they have seen 9/11. They have seen two, let's say, almost equivalent of Great Depressions. They have seen wars. They have seen an era of presidency in the US that you never imagined. They have seen air crashes. So, in 20 years of their life, they have seen things which otherwise may have taken us a lifetime to deliver. And after all, we are all creatures and victims of our experiences, right? So I think just being able to talk with them, I always say you should talk, you should converse with people, not talk to people. So I think just, again, just doing the simple things right, very often to my mind is the way to go forward. And then you hope like hell that they will listen to you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Amit. I'll take that with me at home, at work, both. So concluding, I think tremendous benefits of digitization. We spoke about efficiency, cost, speed, but also things like growth and innovation. At the same time, thank you for bringing in this point of inclusion. Nikita, great point. High tech plus high touch, that mix is important. Rajesh, to you also. And innovation, and last but not the least, which is coming out as a theme in the entire event, the importance of empowerment, enablement, and the new definition of a CEO, of Chief Engagement Officer. So thank you very much.